this session. And as you must have seen in the abstract, I'm going to be covering some of the new features that has happened that have been introduced in Windows Azure over the last few weeks. Just to give a quick introduction, as you see, my name is Vineet Arora, and a photograph if we happen to meet anytime in any event. Love to certainly interact more and get to know you better. I work with a company called WinWire Technologies. I'm also very closely associated with Microsoft and act as one of their virtual technical specialists. What that means is that if Microsoft has need for bringing experts on a particular technology, I am available not as an employee, but as one of the partner from one of the partner organizations. I also have my Azure certifications. A little over a year ago, I passed that, and that's something I've been very much focused on, Azure as a platform. You can connect with me on my Twitter, or certainly look forward to connecting with few of you on the LinkedIn. Before we jump into the actual session, just one slide to introduce our company. As you can very well see, WinWire Technologies is an IT services company, very much focused on the area of collaboration and analytics solution. We help enterprises, build these solutions, design the solutions, deploy, and even manage them. And of course, over the last few years, some of the upcoming technologies like cloud, mobility, big data, better user interface, which is the need of the hour for many enterprise applications, have also been our focus area. A set of products and technologies that we have expertise on, and we work with everyone from Fortune 20 customers to small and medium businesses across the United States. Moving on to the actual content. Everybody is hearing about cloud. Everybody is excited about cloud. Everybody speaks about cloud. Everything is related to the cloud. That is something very much a reality. What I'm going to be talking is not just general about cloud, not just talk about why and how of the cloud, because I'm sure all of you have heard enough about it over the last couple of years. I'm going to be primarily focusing on some of these areas. Just quickly cover the evolution of the Microsoft public cloud infrastructure called Windows Azure. Focus specifically again within that also on what is new in Windows Azure. I've done a few sessions in the past where I've talked about the features that have been brought up over the last couple of years, but there have been some very exciting features introduced in the last couple of months actually, and I'll love to show you some of the demos of the Azure website, the Azure virtual machine infrastructure, and talk a little bit about cloud services and mobile services, something that has been very recently introduced and enhanced the features of the current implementations. Moving on, as I said, certainly we all are excited about cloud. We use cloud in three different manners. The infrastructure as a service for utilizing not your own hardware, but a rented hardware, building applications which you can deploy, and of course consuming software. And I'm assuming all of you are aware of these three terms around IaaS, PaaS, and software as a service. Now, when we look at focusing specifically on the Microsoft platform, how does the various offerings from Microsoft stack up? If you look at the infrastructure as a service, which is more around the private cloud, this is something that is evolving again. This is not the current page. Things have already evolved, and I'll be talking about some of those new features. When Microsoft talks about infrastructure as a service, the Windows Server Hyper-V services and the System Center are two of the key players in providing you those capabilities. The public cloud, of course, is the Windows Azure platform, and over the last year or so, SQL Azure and associated technologies have been very much infused. Software as a service, Microsoft has a variety of a range of solutions, from everything from having your email on the cloud to having your websites, both as the collaboration portals, which is SharePoint Online, or even the messaging environment like Link. And I'm assuming many of you are already either using it or at least aware of it. Now, the focus of today's session is not about either the SaaS or the private cloud infrastructure offerings that Microsoft has. We are going to be talking more about Windows Azure. And again, just a one slide, not to go too deep, because I'm assuming many of you have heard enough or are aware of what Windows Azure is. Just to give you a quick refresher, Windows Azure is Microsoft's offering of, give me a second, I'm having some, I'm assuming all of you are able to see the slide. The slide technical glitch, sorry about that. Windows Azure is a set of comprehensive set of services that helps you not only build, but deploy and manage applications across a global network of Microsoft managed data centers. So these are not your data centers, but you are still building applications and deploying applications and then managing them. The key phrases that Microsoft talks about is it's a flexible environment and it is open. Now, that's something that is the title of our session also today. How is it open? And I'm going to talk about some of the key features that have been introduced where Microsoft has started talking about this being very much friendly to a larger audience compared to what it has been in the earlier days. Solid, there are very solid SLAs associated with it. Microsoft as an organization is investing a lot of effort and money and time to make sure that this infrastructure that they're setting up is being reliable and scalable for the customer's need. And as I mentioned earlier, Windows Azure over the last couple of years has added a lot many more features. But very specifically, about a month ago, a little over a month ago in June, there were a lot of features that were added that really enhanced Azure as a platform and moved it not just being a platform as a service capability, but also introduced what you hear about infrastructure as a service for the public cloud environment. Right? There are new capabilities, there are new features, and I'll be talking about some of those. And as our Azure webinar series progresses, you'll be seeing more sessions focused specifically on some of the new features where we'll be able to go deeper into those environments. But very much focused is ideally, the name itself says it's Windows Azure. So the first impression is Microsoft has everything related to and associated with Windows as an operating system. But as you will see, there are more operating systems which are supported. There are more languages supported rather than just .NET. And then there are more open protocols and a lot more of open source support, which has not been a very traditional approach of Microsoft, but certainly in the last year or couple of years, this is one of the technology platform areas where Microsoft has opened up to the community, to the open source approach of distributing and integrating with other environments. This is how I see, and I'm sure you may have seen this slide in any Microsoft sessions before. Windows Azure was distributed into three high-level components. Windows Azure itself, which provided you the web and the worker environment, worker roles. Very familiar tools, technologies. You could use environments that you're used to, like Visual Studio. There was a web portal to provision new website, new web roles, new worker roles. Then in between, in the last year or so, Microsoft also introduced SQL Azure, similar data models, similar approaches as to SQL that you will have on premises. The same development environment so that organizations could move their applications which are using databases directly to the cloud, which is using SQL Azure. App Fabric was introduced with more focused on integrating your applications to something that you may be running on premises or to your data centers. Now, this has had its success. Organizations have built, and there have been lots of success stories that you can find on Microsoft Azure website on how organizations have used these. And we as WinWire Technologies have certainly also built solutions leveraging these functionalities. As the industry evolves in the whole cloud environment, Microsoft has looked at introducing some of the other services. And these services are the ones that I'm going to focus on now. I've had sessions earlier on the core Windows Azure as a platform and SQL Azure, but some of the interesting services is around virtual machines, which brings in the infrastructure as a service. And then websites, which is one of the very neat features built into the platform where you could develop your own custom websites without requiring any other kind of a hosting provider or any infrastructure requirement. Mobile services, the latest addition to the list, is also something that enables you to have cloud as the backend for your mobile applications, most probably looking at enterprise mobile applications. And then, of course, we have had cloud services. They have been enhanced to now support multi-tier applications, and then big data, and one of the new additions is the media services. In the rest of the session, I'm going to be focusing on some of these services and take you through an example of how these services can be used on the Windows Azure environment. And then there will be sessions in our series where we'll go deeper into individual services with dedicated sessions, showing you actual usage along with code for some of these services. I'm not going to cover some of the areas like CDN or more details around storage because they have been enhanced, but some of the biggest features that makes the Azure environment now a lot more open to the world is the ones that I'm going to be focusing on. Let's first start with the biggest difference that you see from a usage perspective. The Azure Management Portal, if you've used Azure for a while, you would have known there has been a website that allows you to manage every aspect of your Azure service. You can sign up for a trial 90-day edition, and then it enables individual services that you could manage around your web roles, around your worker roles, maybe your SQL databases, your SQL Azure reporting, all of those. That portal itself has been enhanced a lot, and some of the key features that have been introduced is, of course, support for all browsers, working with the monitoring support, so that you have right there in the portal a dashboard to monitor how your services are performing, and I will be showing you some demos of those. More than that, as this thing matures, your IT organization requires more automated and scripted ways of managing your Azure hosted infrastructure. There are command line tools, there are PowerShell support for automating many of those tasks. And I will be showing you some of those functionalities from a UI perspective in this session. And in future sessions, we'll be showing you certainly how PowerShell can be used to perform those same tasks in a much more automated fashion. Just a quick screenshot of what the management portal looks like. I'll certainly shift over and give you a quick demo. However, these are some of the things that once you have the sites available after this particular session, you can refer to them. These are the kind of screenshots that will give you an idea about what the portal provides you. So with further ado, let's move to a quick demo of the Windows Azure Management Portal. I have this web browser open. This is our portal, and I have, as you can see, a bunch of services which are listed out here. These are all available to me as one snapshot of showing what all is deployed on my Azure subscription. I have my storage accounts, I have some virtual machines, I have some services running, I even have some websites running. I can get a quick snapshot of those. I can drill deeper into individual services, like if I have a couple of websites running, I have my virtual machines running. It shows you all the information right here. And if I click actually on any one of those, it takes you to the actual environment to look at more information about that particular service. This, for example, is a webinar website that I created before this webinar, and it's not running. But if it is being used, you will see the graphs of looking at the information out here. And we'll be coming back to these screens as we go through the individual demos. You have a lot of actions which you can do out here. You have a lot of information available to you, and a very nice looking, very simple user interface available to you out here with actions, very much at the bottom toolbar. One of the common things that is required is for you to have a capability to use this interface and create new services. So something that in the next couple of demos I'll be taking you through, but when I click on this new, I get these set of services that I have enabled on my Windows Azure account. So I can create websites, I can create virtual machines, I can also create mobile services, my cloud services, which is, again, as we'll talk about, multi-tiered applications, SQL databases or storage, or even VPN, kind of a private network. And media services is the last one. This interface is built with the idea that you may not have all the services, or as Microsoft introduces new services, the same menu option will start getting enhanced, and it will provide you what you are subscribed to, but it will be the similar experience if another service gets added, not that you have to follow a different mechanism to create databases versus creating the actual websites. So I'm going to come back to the screen, but this is, as you will see, is still termed as the preview version. You do have an option for your same Azure subscription to go back to the older version of Azure Management Portal if you wish to. However, you will see that majority of the functionalities are available right here, and it is pretty neat. You can do a lot of filtering or sorting of these information that is available to you. You can search based upon a particular thing. For example, if I want to look at one of my special solution, as soon as I start typing, I get to know everything related to one of my applications called ILS, and it starts showing them showing right there. You have a few settings. I wouldn't spend too much time into it, but you have individual subscription settings, certificates that you manage, and there are a good set of features to explore out there. But certainly a very enhanced version of how you will be able to manage all your services in a central location. Moving back to the Azure session, and just talking quickly about, again, the open nature of Windows Azure. One of the things that is very much clear to Microsoft is just enabling .NET as a platform is not going to attract a lot of audience and developers to the Windows platform, the Windows Azure platform. So this has been there even before, but now the SDKs from everything from .NET to Node.js, even Java and PHP, those SDKs have even been published along with the source codes on GitHub. GitHub is one of those repositories where you get to download, and organizations like Microsoft, whoever is building the SDKs, will be able to publish it as an open source. So it's something that you can take in and customize it for your needs that may be required. More than that, of course, the Visual Studio as a development environment, both the 2010 and the very latest release 2012 are both supported. for building any of the applications using any of these languages. If you go to the Developer Center available on Microsoft's Microsoft's Azure website, you will find a set of information about not just downloads of SDK, but information about how to build using any of these different platforms and technologies. All these languages and tools are supported right out of the box. You do not need to do any kind of a customization. These are all SDKs that you can add, and you can use Visual Studio as a single development environment for building any of these applications. I talked about GitHub. GitHub.com/Windows Azure is the place where you will find the repository and the source code for all these SDKs for various languages. I would certainly encourage you to go ahead and download that from there. It's available for free. You can download it and reuse it as required. Okay, moving to a very specific set of services which have been introduced in the latest version of Windows Azure platform. And one of the key features, as I earlier mentioned briefly, is all around virtual machines. Now, some of you who may have been working with Windows Azure for a long may say there has been a VM role that has existed for a while. And yes, I do have a comparison on how this virtual machines service introduced in Windows Azure differs from the VM role that has existed. It is more around scalability and, of course, persistence that is required. You could also build now not just a web and a service. You could build a combination of those, include virtual machines into that, and build what are called cloud services. This is your typical design and architecture that you think about looking at multiple tier applications where there are databases involved. There may be some custom third-party applications involved. There may be integration required with your on-premises systems, and then there are middleware and the front-end applications required, and now even the mobile services are required. So cloud services is more around thinking of those multi-tier applications, with each of those maybe using a different language or a different tool altogether. And that is the uniqueness of Windows Azure platform, where it allows for that openness, that you could have the middleware maybe written in Java, the front end written in ASP.NET, and you may be using the iOS SDK, for example, to also build a mobile version of the same application, and all of it could be leveraging the Windows Azure as an overall platform and the individual services and SDKs which are available. Websites, something which seems very straightforward and simple, but it is one of the very exciting features that has been introduced in this latest version of Azure. Primarily focused on building websites with a user interface that may also have some databases behind the scene, but not only just an ASP.NET, but even looking at other technologies for other platforms like PHP, Node.js, and as you will see, a couple of other features is also using some of the industry-leading web or CMS platforms like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal. All those are also supported, and many more are getting added to the list. And last but not least is, as I said, you are not investing into infrastructure. You're focusing more on building the application. So on that point, I would like to show you one perspective on which I think will give you a good idea about, okay, I have all these options available to me, right? Depending upon the amount of control that you need, depending on the focus that you want to have, you could have everything in your data center. You could have applications, data, your firewall, and your network configuration, of course, your operating system. Virtualization could be introduced, and you will have to buy your own hardware. That's your data center. When you look at Windows Azure and consider that Windows Azure should be one of my options, and I talked about the three options, virtual machines. You look at virtual machines where you do want to manage and control your application, your data, and even your network rules, your firewall rules, your integrating with some other networks and operating system. So you still are in control of the operating system. It's just that your virtualization and your hardware aspects are totally taken away. If you look at cloud services, then your operating system aspect is also taken away, but then you are designing and focusing only on the data and the application part of it. And last but not the least is the website, where your developers, your designers, your IT organization's focus is only on the application and data. Everything else is managed by the underlying infrastructure available in Windows Azure. So the more you have focus on application, the less you have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. But all three options are available depending upon the kind of application, depending upon the kind of solution that you are designing and building. And I'll show you some of the key features on how you can utilize virtual machines, websites, and then cloud services. I think we won't have time today, but we'll certainly go deeper into the cloud services mechanism with some of the code examples. Let's quickly talk about Windows Azure websites. As I said, this is the new functionality in Windows Azure, provided to create websites in few seconds, and that's actually the demo. You can start very simple. You can start building a few web pages, and as you involve the functionality, you have a seamless environment to scale up the kind of hardware, the kind of resources that are allocated to your website's infrastructure. Based upon the popularity, you will be looking at increasing or maybe decreasing, unfortunately. It's not that popular, right? But you have that control available to you. We talked about you may have your code that is currently deployed somewhere else. You could certainly deploy it on the Windows Azure websites environment also, and it could be in ASP.NET, it could be a PHP or Node.js. And not only that, you could be building these web applications also on different operating systems. Again, back to the open nature that why we are talking about is that it's not that you only need to use Visual Studio on a Windows environment to build these websites. You could be using, the different development tools available on Mac or on Linux to be actually developing and then deploying them on Windows Azure. Going live is a matter of few seconds. You don't need to go through a lot of complications of deployment. Microsoft has anyway been known, as a leader in innovating the deployment mechanisms on how easy it is to, from the developers to making it go live. And there are a few, mouse clicks or steps that you can go through to make them live. I'll show you the demo, but the idea is you could quickly create a website. You could create a website with a database, or you could choose from a gallery of CMS environments which are available, like, as I said, WordPress and a lot of other popular CMSs that organizations use. And all those are open source. They're available from the different organizations. Microsoft has done a partnership with them, and they are now available in the gallery for you to utilize as and when you are looking at building a website on that. So let me move back to my Windows Azure environment and show you how to develop a quick website. This will take a few seconds, and you will see how I already have a website. I can go back to that, but I can very quickly build a new website. So going back to the new website, and you have three options. I could quickly create a website, and I could say, this is my demo website for webinar. I could give it a long name. And of course, you will see that this .azurewebsites.net is the default DNS entry that gets created, but that's not what you may have to live with. You do have functionalities available to name it to www. whatever you want it to be called, a website, which will ultimately be mapped to this. But when you create it, it gets created as this particular DNS. And then, of course, you choose the region where you want it deployed. Right now, being a new feature, it's only available on East US. So if you're looking at global scenarios, of course, this will be added automatically and in the very near future. But today, you can only choose East US data center provided by Microsoft for creating this website. So I'll just go ahead and create it. It's very easy. While this is getting created, I'll also show you the other mechanism. If you have to create it using a database, you will of course provide the same name that we provided earlier, but you could also choose an existing database, and I have a bunch of these databases available out here, or you could create a new database. Options of creating new databases, again, back to the open nature, is not just limited to SQL Server. Now you also have MySQL, which has certainly been the backend databases for many of the open source CMS and web content management systems. You also have the option to say, I want to create it using MySQL and not SQL. And I could also choose, if I have created already in my SQL Azure environment, one of the existing databases. These are all pretty straightforward, and you'll see that this website has got created. I can go deeper into it and see various options which are available for this website. I can look at the connection string. I can look at what is the storage that this particular website is using, how much CPU time it has used, what is the data that has been delivered outside, what is the kind of memory which is being used, and this is my URL. You will see one option which is mentioned out here called compute mode is shared. What shared means in this context is Microsoft has hosted this website for you on a full-fledged IIS 7.5 web server, but it is running in an environment which is shared by other websites also. You may want to change that, and if you click on the configure option out here, you have the option to first of all choose the versions. Right, as I said, choose the whole site URL that you want, what kind of a logging and what kind of other settings that you may want. If you have built web service websites, you will know the web.config approach or the name value pair. Those settings are the ones that you can add out here. You can add some connection strings to some databases, and then you also have, of course, a list of default documents which you can choose. Oh, I'd like still index.html. That's the what I want rather than default.html, or maybe your own document itself. When it comes to scaling, instead of using the shared infrastructure, you do have an option to move this to a reserved infrastructure. Of course, it will cost you differently. There is a different mechanism available to that, but you could choose, I want this website, once it is popular, to start using a small machine or a medium machine or even a large machine. And then even for this, you could choose multiple instances. So depending on what functionality, how many users you have, what kind of scalability you need, without changing anything in your code or application, you're just able to go up or configure it down to a smaller configuration. This is, and if you're in shared, you still have an instance available. You may want to run it as multiple instances, without actually having a dedicated hardware allocated to that. One more feature of the website is the capability to look at uploading some package. Now, these are applications that you may have developed at the ASP.NET or PHP or Node.js package, and you could upload it. So what we created was a website on an IIS web server, but your actual content, your actual code, your actual pages can be uploaded as a package, or if you're in Visual Studio, that will of course be one of the options to deploy the application. Now this is of course something that will be covered in a future session when we are going to focus on the actual code. Let me show you the other option of creating a website using one of the standard CMSs which are available in Windows Azure. You have blogs, you have CMS, you even have e-commerce related options, forums that are available to you. For the sake of this, create WordPress. Very much familiar with it. WordPress, of course, on their own website publishes and keeps on updating their packages. Microsoft has done a partnership with WordPress, and I'll say webinar demo 2 or 3, just to be clear. And then WordPress, of course, uses MySQL database. It does not allow you to do anything else. You could use an existing one if you already had one, or maybe create a new one. And of course, this is still on the East US. It tells you which version of WordPress it will be using, what is the size, and you do not need to still worry about it. Microsoft will enable this for you. This is the database name, and I'll just agree to these comments. These are because it's, let me see if I can create this. Sorry, space allowed. It's a database name. I'm wondering why I'm not able to. Look at this. I'm going to probably show you an existing one that is existing. I'm not sure why it's not allowing me to right now link on this. Let me just see if I provided everything fine. This looks okay. Maybe use an existing database. I already have an existing database. I'll try to use that. Yes, I have this database. I can select it, and I'll go ahead and create this. So what this is doing is it's creating a WordPress site for me. You can look at the progress of what all activities are happening. You can look at the details. It's been made very intuitive within the web browser itself. So I have this blank website created. The webinar demo 3 that I'm showing you, what this is doing is it's contacting WordPress, downloading the latest code base, creating the databases, and then actually deploying the website. And within a few seconds, once it's up, I'll be able to actually go ahead and have my website up and ready without really worrying about where is it hosted, what are the other configurations that I need to do. Voila, so it's created. I'll go ahead and click on that. It gives me webinar demo 3.azure website. This is the WordPress setup. Okay, webinar demo. I'll give a very strong password. This is for the admin. I can give my email, and I do not want. That's it. That's the setup. Within a few seconds, it'll use a default template, and you will have a website up and running. If you've worked with WordPress before, of course, there are many more settings and many more configurations you can do, but I'll log in. I'm logging right now as admin. This is the familiar WordPress interface that is available. You can log into this. I don't want to remember it. And you will have a website created. That should just come up. And I'm going to go ahead and open this. Still not created. Right. This is the new website. You can choose a particular theme. You can customize it. What do you want to do? These all are this is the administration interface that is available to you. You can choose all the settings, but how easy it is to create a blog space website is what I just wanted to show you. It's running on Azure platform. Microsoft has hosted it for you, and you can look at the various metrics around it, like the dashboard that I was talking about. I just access those pages, so it shows you what is the CPU time which was used, what is the data, what is the data out, is there any errors, how many requests were made. So even your typical website monitoring is very much available right here on the interface where you're managing the rest of the configurations around your website. You will see many of the functionalities to publish, to set up this in TFS, which is Microsoft's Team Foundation server. where you may want to have a team managing the website development, and a lot of functionalities could be added using Visual Studio, or you could be using Git publishing, which is the command line version from the other platforms that you can have. There is a functionality that I'll talk about probably when we give you a much more deeper demo of website around publishing profile, which essentially is all the information that Windows Azure wants to provide to your development environment about the setup on their side for this website. So the website, the web server settings, the connection strings, and everything else. But you also have FTP-based access to the same location. So for the same website, there is a FTP that has been created. You can use that to deploy files if you're looking at. You have access to the MySQL database behind the scene. You can even dive deeper into managing this database on your own. All right, I'll move away from this particular section and hopefully give you a good idea about how you can look at using Windows Azure to develop not only just standard as you have developed in the past Microsoft technology like ASP and ASP.NET based website, but you could use any of the other CMSs available in the environment, or in one of our future sessions, we'll show you how to use Node.js or PHP based website and deploy it and manage it in the same infrastructure. Moving on to one of the the largest sort of a feature addition for Windows Azure as an overall platform, and this is around virtual machines. Yes, Microsoft has promoted and deployed Windows Azure mostly as a platform as a service solution, and that's how it has been known for a while. Amazon, on the other hand, has been primarily infrastructure as a service solution, and both of them are, I think, approaching towards the other side. Microsoft has taken a huge leap in providing public cloud infrastructure as a service using this particular service in Windows Azure, very much integrated with rest of the service. That is very, very important to understand, because it's not just running just hardware, but you could have applications running on these virtual machines, which will ultimately be used by other services within the Windows Azure environment. So the idea is, of course, for you to be able to create any virtual machine of your own with operating systems that there is a long list of operating systems available today, and they will continue getting increased. But those are the ones where you already have a legacy application, or you're looking at building an infrastructure instead of buying a new hardware and setting it up in your data center. Lot of availability features, lots of scalability that Microsoft provides, following the similar mechanism like storage. At the end of the day, the virtual machine is using the underlying storage functionality of Azure. So every virtual machine has 3 copies in one of the data centers of Microsoft Windows Azure, and it will mean that you have access to your virtual machine whenever you're looking at providing. Advanced networking, you could deploy it on Windows Azure, but it could be working as seamlessly as it is in your data center, and be interacting with systems which you cannot move to the cloud, like your ERP environments, and it could be exchanging data between those. As I mentioned, a very important point is Microsoft has built it grounds up to focus on not just having isolated infrastructure available to you, but also look at integrating with other platform as services that have been existing or that are being enhanced, like mobile services, like cloud services, to also use virtual machines. So one part of your overall solution could be deployed as a VM in your Windows Azure environment, and your website could very well make a call into a solution or an application that is running. Some of the easy thinking that organizations have done, as Microsoft has promoted them, is to look at applications which I may not have a full-fledged compatibility to deploy on a platform as a service scenario. I have them running on 1 to X number of servers on my data center, but I want to leverage the other functionalities like the scalability and the reliability and the availability features that are available by Azure without investing in new hardware infrastructure. I could package those applications as virtual machines and then deploy them on Windows Azure platform, and it starts providing all the capabilities that we just talked about, but your application is still running with all its own components, all its third-party components. For some, you may not have the deployments possible directly on Windows Azure, so you will need to have that kind of a scenario. Quickly talk about, and this is very well documented on Microsoft site also, but the VM role that has existed, that has certainly created some excitement, but at the same time some disappointment also, has a very clear distinction between this new virtual machine mechanism. It is persistent storage. You can add new disks, you can add new storage as you build. These are VHD files, which is again not a Microsoft specific, it's not a Microsoft's own protocol. It is something that they have published. It's a mechanism to have your virtual machines that can be not only on Windows Azure, that may be running on some other virtualization environment, and they could be interchanged between them. You may already have a VHD, you could upload it, or you may be running it on Azure, you could download it and deploy it in your data centers that are existing. Right? Primary use is, I think, a clear distinction. When you look at persistent, long-running applications, which you want to have as a part of your larger solutions, virtual machine is the approach. I'll go ahead and show you again the mechanisms that are available, and here is where you will start seeing a very clear openness of the Windows Azure platform, where not just Windows as the operating system, but you have all the other options also available to build different kinds of virtual machines. As you will see, some of them are packaged. You could have your own VHD and upload it. Let me go through the demo, and I think you'll get a good idea about it. So going back to my Windows Azure management portal, I go to New, Virtual Machine, and then you'll see two very simple options. I can do a quick create, and this means is that this is a webinar VM demo. And I may have some of these standard images. So basic operating systems which are available to me that I could use, and I'll just choose Windows Server. I'll need to give a password for my administrator account, and I could choose how big is this virtual machine that I want to create. Now remember, here you are not really managing or creating or working directly with the VHD file. Microsoft will be taking care of that, but it will ultimately be a dedicated environment. It's not the website or the cloud services where you do not have the access to the underlying infrastructure. So I could say, I just want like 2 cores, 3 GB, I want it on West US, and that's it. What this does, and I'll look at the virtual machine. This one is getting created, webinar VM demo. It's provisioning. You could look at what all is happening, and the basic one has been created. Now, this means that Microsoft has a template that they're using, but they are getting it copied over to your Windows Azure subscription, and that needs a storage. So ultimately, there is a storage that is required to store the operating system disks and any additional disk that you may want to add to create your server. So while this is happening, let me show you a quick another option is I may not want to just create like this blank. I now also have images from a library where not only Windows, I may have a very SQL pre-configured SQL Server 2012 evaluation. I don't need to even worry about once I get the operating system image to install my software that I need. I could directly have a SQL Server image created, or you could have Linux, either Ubuntu or SUSE or even OpenLogic, These are some of the images that, in partnership with Linux, which is, as you know, unheard of in Microsoft environment, but certainly you could create a VHD, create a virtual machine, to be more precise, using any of these operating systems and deploy any of the applications that you are used to run on your Linux environment. Very powerful, very much open nature that Azure is providing. My disk, I do not have any disks right now out here, but I may have my own disks created in my data center, and I could very well upload them in my storage environment, storage net account of Azure, and be able to create a virtual machine using that. So let's come out of that. I think it's just got created, and it's stopping because it's just rebooting sort of it. You will see different options. You have, of course, once it gets restarted, you will be able to connect to it. But I have this attach. What attach means is I want to attach like a D drive or an E drive where my actual data will be stored, or I want to copy some of my other content because it's ultimately a server which has been provisioned for me. So I'll just attach an empty disk for now. I'll call it this file name, and I can choose maybe just give me 20 gigs, and that's it. Let me click on this. It's getting created. What you can do is once this virtual machine is provisioned, right, it is as good as if you're used to having virtual machines or whatever virtual technologies you're using, VMware or Hyper-V or anything. You work with them by doing an RDP session into those, and you will have the similar functionality available once this is created. You can, of course, look at capturing a particular image name, right? You can download this image once it is configured and customized, and you may want to have a copy of it, or you may want to deploy it in your network. Very much possible. Again, leveraging the time that is available while this is being provisioned. One of the key features where once you're creating some things like this, like virtual machines, is to be able to integrate back with your data center. Right? You may have applications and solutions running which you cannot upload or upgrade or deploy it on your Azure environment or cloud environment. That's where the networks come into the picture. This is the capability for you to create connectivity between your data center and the Windows Azure hosted technologies or solutions, which could include virtual machines or even your websites. But this makes it seamless to have a virtual private network between solutions that are running on your data center and your Windows Azure. So it's very simple. I'll not create anything right now. I'll just show you that you could create a virtual network. You'll be graphically able to link your virtual machines to your network. You have all the security available to limit it to that particular network to be only communicating. You will be able to define. So if I just go ahead, my private network, I'll create a new group, and I'll again say West US. You'll be able to specify addresses, you'll be able to specify subnets, you'll be able to specify a lot of this specific connectivities between your environment and this environment. And then something I will not right now go into deeper, but you have VPN clients which you may be used to, either Cisco or any of the others. All of them are available on the Windows Azure platform to be used to connect to this particular network. Going back to the virtual machine, and it's running. You can see that it's running now. I can again look at the dashboard for the VM demo. It gives me disks, read, write, network in, network out. Nothing has happened right now. Of course, these are the basic functionalities, and you'll see there's an OS disk that was provisioned automatically, and then there is a data disk. And of course, it has been created on a public virtual IP address. This is the IP address that is available to you to connect to, like it is a normal machine. And you of course have an internal IP address if you're running any other services on your Windows Azure environment to connect to this server or any solution running on this server. Simply put, this all is good. I can use this connect option and actually link to my machine I just created. I'm going to ask again for it, and I'll give the password that I just gave. And voila, this is your Windows 2012 server virtual machine. You have a full-fledged access to how you would have a normal hardware available to you in your data center, and you can look at configuring this. You can install anything that you require, your software. You could upload the data that you require, and as I said, once you have the networks configured, the solutions running here could also be connecting with your backend environment. Some of the very popular scenarios that have been thought through for using this virtual machine is to deploy SharePoint, one of the very popular solutions in many organizations around the world. SharePoint Online, not to go too much into comparison, but has its own limitations. But this provides you to use the cloud, but have a full-fledged SharePoint, your own licenses deployed in the cloud environment, still utilizing all the availability and scalability options that you will have. Or deploy your own SQL server, or deploy any of the other custom solutions that you may have. So this is like, as I said, your own machine. You have full access to it. I'll just quickly show you this before moving back to the session. You have documents, libraries. You have 2 disks that have been added. One is, of course, your OS that you did not create, and the temporary storage. And I could upload it anything out here. I have FTP. I have remote desktop access. This is the full-fledged functionality that is available to me. Okay. As I said in the beginning itself, I don't think we'll have time to go through, we will have future sessions for cloud services, but at a very high level, some of the other services, a mobile service, this is one of the latest additions, in fact, as early as this week. This has been added to the Azure list of services, where you can create a set of Azure running services which can be called from your mobile apps. It started, of course, with Windows 8 mobile apps, and it will be extended to iOS and Android also. It includes push notifications. It includes running code on the server side. It includes identity and login mechanisms for building your scalable mobile apps also. So I'll not. We are approaching the end of this allocated hour for the session. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. These were some of the key features that we wanted to cover. I have a quick demo. I'll show you. You can create new mobile services. Very simple to create. Just give it a URL that you want to create, a new app, and you could use an existing SQL Server database, or you want to create a new database. This is where, of course, all your data is stored for your actual application. Admin. I think in the interest of time, I'll move back. I'm getting a ping from back that we are almost done with the time allocated for this session. But that's the idea, that you could build this application. So I won't be able to cover cloud services as I talked about, but you will have access to these slides, and we can talk more about in the detailed session that we'll have around cloud services on how Microsoft Windows Azure has provided now multi-tiered infrastructure to build applications, using any of these technologies, any of these languages that you're seeing. And if it can run on Windows, it can run on Windows Azure, but it could be leveraging middleware, it could be leveraging virtual machine or databases of its own. I'll skip through some of these slides and summarize the session by saying the idea of openness in Windows Azure is multiple operating systems. You saw Windows, you saw Linux, you saw even support for Mac OS to build and deploy solutions. A lot of functionalities around VM, websites, and cloud services. And then, of course, most of the popular languages are supported to build solutions for Windows Azure. Divya, do we have any questions? We have a Q&A option available in live meeting, and in the next few minutes, we'll love to take some questions. But thank you very much for your time. And the biggest question that we hear is, you will have a copy of slides. Yes, we'll publish it on our website, and you'll have access to it. I encourage you to go ahead, evaluate our services on Windows Azure, what we provide, and what Microsoft has, of course, to offer. Is the WindowsAzure.com is available on WindowsAzure.com as a 90-day trial for you to start utilizing some of these services that we talked about. Thank you very much for your time. And Divya, if you have any questions, I will certainly like to take those. So I guess there are no questions right now. Please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll certainly provide you. You can follow us on Twitter, where we keep an update on what all is happening with WinWire and what all stuff we are doing on Windows Azure and the other technologies. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening, good day, and happy long Labor Day weekend to everyone. Thank you.